Hi, everyone. Welcome. Thanks so much for joining us. Good morning, everyone. I see folks are logging in. As folks are logging into our session, I want to go ahead and talk a little bit about our info series as folks are logging in. Welcome. Thanks, everyone. You're joining the Austin Development Services info series. Today, we're going to talk about property possibilities. We're talking about zoning and land use. So welcome, everyone. Good morning. Good evening, everyone. All right, I'll talk a little bit about the info series as folks are continuing to log on. I see folks trickling in. So welcome, you're listening and tuning in to Development Services Info Series. This series is a monthly series and it's designed with you, our community members, in mind. And we are all about connecting you with helpful information and links and practical tips and insights about the services we provide, and also about guidance on the information that our subject matter experts have to offer to you. Some of the topics that we've covered in the past are like building under home. We're going to talk a little bit about that today. We also have tips on like spring cleaning from our code compliance. We have home maintenance tips. We had a great one on landscape design, and we invited some of our friends from watershed protection. We had one on like navigating our data. We have a lot of online resources, and we did a deep dive into how to find data, how to navigate that data. And then we talked about like homestead permits and some of the latest on property maintenance requirements, like air conditioning requirements. You can tune into some of those if you miss them. I'll share the link. It's publicinput.com/info series. I'll go ahead and share that link in the chat in a bit so that you can go back, take a look at them, and review some of the past sessions that we've had. Each of the sessions that we have on a monthly basis is about helping homeowners and you, our community members, feel more informed about our services. And we bring our subject matter experts, our staff members, not only from development services, but also from our partner departments who know this information and who work on these services every day. We want to share their knowledge, answer your questions on everything that you need to know. And we want to make sure that it's clear and useful information to help you navigate our processes and to make the most of the resources available to you. All right, I'll go ahead and get started, everyone. Good morning. My name is Isis Lopez, and I'm the Engagement Manager for Development Services. Today's topic is a beginner's guide to zoning and land use. We have a few subject matter experts in the room today. You might be able to see them. We have Victor Azuna, Development Services Manager. We have John Richards, Plans Examiner C, and Mike Peralta, Plans Examiner C as well. Not with us, but I also want to mention we have Myra Rivera, who helped contribute to the information. She's a Plans Examiner Manager. Next slide. Before we begin, I want to quickly overview what to expect in the engagement format for today's session. We have a presentation ready for you today by our friends and by our staff member with lots of information on land use zoning. So we'll have that presentation, and then you'll have an opportunity to ask questions, and they'll be able to answer those questions. There's two ways that you can participate, depending on time. You could raise your hands by using the raise hand feature on Zoom, or you can write a question using the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen. You can ask any questions throughout the presentation as you think of them, and then we'll answer them. We'll make sure to answer them through the Q&A function. Please make sure to use the Q&A function. That helps us keep track of what questions have been answered and what questions we're still pending, versus the chat feature. You can go ahead and send us a chat for any technical troubleshooting. If you can't find the Q&A feature, let us know in the chat and we'll help you troubleshoot. But the Q&A function is definitely better to make sure we keep track of that as well. So if you have any issues, let us know. I'll also say that while we hope to answer all of your questions, we might not have all the information, or we might not have enough time to answer them. So we'll answer them to the best of our ability. And for those that we don't get the answers to, we'll post a follow-up. We'll send you a follow-up response as well. I would also like to note that this meeting is going to be recorded. So if you are taking notes or like taking screenshots, know that the meeting will be recorded, and you will receive a link to the presentation along with a recording. All of our recordings are posted to our public meetings page, and you can take a look at any of the past sessions that we've had. If you missed any of the other ones, you can take a look at them as well. And I'll say that we already have our February session posted, so that's also on our public input page. That one is about different permit types. So go ahead and check it out, register for that so you can get the Zoom link and take a look at it. All right, next slide. All right, so today we are going to be talking about zoning. What is zoning? What's the difference between zoning and land use? What are some development standards? And what does that mean as you are applying for a permit? So Victor, Mike, and John will overview that. And then, as I mentioned, we'll have a Q&A, a question and answer session, opportunities for you to ask questions to our subject matter experts. All right, and with that, I'll turn it over to Victor. Victor, what do you have for us today?
Next slide, please. Thanks, Isis. So my name is Victor Azine. I am a Development Services Division Manager with Austin Development Services. Austin Development Services is a department at the City of Austin that helps our community navigate the development process and comply with local zoning, building code, and development regulations. To that end, we support homeowners, renters, and leasers of space and homes, business owners, contractors, and developers, and many other members of our community. Next slide, please. And I specifically oversee a team in our department named Land Use Assistance. Specifically, we help people understand the city's land development rules, applications, processes, and requirements. Next slide, please. Like Isis mentioned, today we will be joined by myself, John Richards, and Mike Peralta. And then Myra Rivera is a plans examiner manager on our team, and she contributed a lot of helpful information to this presentation as well. Next slide, please. As a whole, we help applicants understand land development regulations and permit application requirements related to land use in Austin. And we provide guidance on submitting zoning applications, site plan application subdivisions, and other related permits. Next slide, please. The land use assistance team specifically helps applicants guide submission of land use applications, including zoning, site plan, subdivision, and we'll get a little more into detail about what all those words mean in a moment. We also provide case management for select housing and affordable housing projects, and try really hard to act as a single point of contact to coordinate across teams in the development review process. Next slide, please. So the question of the day and what we're all here for, what is zoning? Simplistically, and in its basic sense, zoning is a power granted to cities by the state of Texas. Zoning is intended to promote public health and safety and general welfare, but also there's a number of other added benefits. Zoning is a tool that can help preserve areas of cultural significance, historical significance, architectural significance, and environmental significance. Next slide, please. But you're probably still asking, but what is zoning? So zoning is really comprised of three building blocks. At the top of our pyramid, you have zoning districts. And zoning districts really speak to what can be built. Then the bottom part of our pyramid is comprised of two things: land uses, which talks about what can be built, and development or intensity standards, which speaks to how much of something can be built. We'll go into these a little further coming up. Next slide, please. So there's a few things that zoning is not. Like I mentioned, zoning establishes zoning districts. It defines land uses and sets out development standards. But zoning is not building code requirements. When we think about building code requirements, those are more related to the safety of structures that you and I might occupy or be near on a daily basis. Zoning is also not building permits. Through a building permit review process, we may ensure that a building is complying with zoning regulations, but it's not zoning directly. And zoning is also not regulation related to property lines or subdivision of land. Again, in the subdivision process, we will refer to and review for zoning elements, but it is not zoning directly. Next slide, please. So the first building block at the top of our pyramid is zoning districts. Zoning districts are distinct areas of land, usually shown on a map, such as this one, that would show what uses are allowed on a property, how intensely that particular property or site can be developed, and where development can occur on the lot. Next slide, please. Within each zoning district, there's two different types of regulation. There's land use and development standards. So land use is a way that we classify how property is used. Just like a dictionary, each land use has a title and an associated definition. Generally, zoning districts will allow, prohibit, or allow with special approval various land uses. It's kind of like flipping a switch. And that special approval usually comes in the form of approval granted by a land use commission. Examples of individual land uses could be single family, residential, duplex, retail, restaurant, warehouse, and many more. These are just simple examples. The ones in the City of Austin's code have different names. Next slide, please. So the third building block, development standards. Development standards are related to building standards, height, lot size, and some other environmental regulations. We'll dive into each of those a little further in the next few slides. Next slide. So the first group of development standards relates to building placement, or where a building can be placed on a lot. It's really comprised of two different regulations. The first one is required yards. So a required yard is the space between the property line and where a building and structure can be built. It's really, if we're talking about a home, it's the front yard, the backyard, the side yards. You also have setback lines. Setback lines are the actual invisible line that marks where the building can begin when set back from the street. So really, the intent of setbacks and required yards are to support fire protection, landscaping, and visual appearance. Next slide. The next group of development standards relate to building size and building height. Height restrictions regulate how tall a building can be. In Austin, this is typically measured as the vertical distance between the lowest and highest point of the building at finished grade. Some other building size development standards are floor to area ratio. Floor to area ratio is the total building area to the total lot area, and that's expressed as a fraction or a ratio. So for example, if you had a floor to area ratio of 2:1, that means that the square footage of your building could be twice the size of your total lot area. Also, when we talk about building size and height development standards, we look at building coverage. Building coverage is expressed as a percentage, and it's the percentage of the lot covered by the building. And typically that's the first floor of the building. And that is, so for example, if you had a building coverage of 50%, then that means half of your lot could be covered by your building. Next slide, please. Another group of development standards relate to lot size and site standards. So examples of these are minimum lot area. Minimum lot area is the minimum size of that a lot can be when it's created. And that's typically measured in square feet. That sometimes will work to regulate density of the number of either homes or businesses in a certain area. You also have site area, and site area is the amount of land required per dwelling unit. This is usually used when we're talking about residential developments like condominiums, townhomes, and multifamily. And again, you'll have a certain square footage of land that is required for every dwelling unit on that site. Finally, for lot and site standards, we have minimum lot width, and that's the length of the lot's property line when measured at the street. Again, typically when you see a wider lot length, that would mean fewer homes or other businesses in an area. Next slide, please. And then finally, we have impervious cover. Impervious cover, the term impervious cover means coverage development that prevents water from soaking back into the ground when it rains. So sidewalks, driveways, parking areas, and buildings are all considered impervious cover. It is an environmental regulation, and especially in communities like Austin that have concerns with flooding, impervious cover regulation can also help prevent flooding, because what will happen is as rain falls on an area, if it falls on concrete, driveways, it runs off very quickly. However, if it falls onto the ground, which allows it to soak in quicker, it will stay in that area and not run off and potentially not cause flooding. Next slide. So that's really zoning regulation at a really high basic level. Now, I'm sure I can hear some of y'all saying, well, what about compatibility standards? Or what about subchapter E or urban design standards or certificates, or I'm sorry, or conditional overlays? Well, the fact of the matter is zoning and development regulations can be complex. Zoning requirements can vary based on the zoning districts, property characteristics, what type of use is proposed, and in some cases there are if-then scenarios. For questions about specific sites and specific more complicated parts of the zoning regulations, I encourage the public, business owners, homeowners, neighbors to schedule an appointment with either myself or a member of my team using our online scheduler. The land use assistance team can help applicants and folks with questions about zoning and land use, explain how regulations would apply to a specific property, and help customers understand their next steps. Next slide, please. So with every zoning district, if you were to have a meeting with us, you might find that there is a reason that you might want to change your zoning district. Either a use that you want to construct or operate on the site is not permitted, or perhaps a property owner might want to build more than is permitted in that zoning district as it stands. In those situations, there is a process to change zoning. Zoning changes are most often requested by property owners, but occasionally they can be initiated by the city. The process would generally include submitting a zoning change application to the city. Once that application is submitted, the city will provide notice to nearby property owners, utility account holders, and neighborhood organizations. The city also reviews the city also will review the application and prepare a report. And then also there will be public hearings that are held. There's typically at least 2 public hearings held. One is before the Land Use Commission, and then the other one is at City Council. City Council will make the final decision on the zoning change. And after considering feedback from neighbors, feedback in staff report, and other information provided. Next slide, please. So zoning is, as I mentioned earlier, zoning is one piece of our development process, but it's not the whole thing. It's actually one slice of a 6-slice pie. So over the next few slides, we'll talk more about how zoning affects some of the other slices in that pie. Next slide, please. So one thing, as I mentioned, that we look at when we review subdivision applications is we look at the zoning regulations. With a subdivision application, the city reviews lot lines, lot sizes, access to lots to make sure that the lots not only comply with our zoning requirements, but are also safe to provide water service and emergency services too. During the subdivision process, our reviewers will ensure that the individual lots being created meet our zoning requirements and that they can actually be developed consistent with our zoning regulations and city code. Next slide. Residential plan review is another part of the process. I'm going to hand it over to my colleague, John Richards, who will expand on that part of the process more.
Thank you, Victor. Hi, my name is John Richards. I'm a zoning plans examiner for residential plan review. And so what we do is we review building permit applications for new construction, repairs, alterations, additions, and then structures that applies to the scope of the International Residential Building Code, or commonly referred to as the IRC. Next slide, please. All right. Structures reviewed. So what we look at single family detached dwellings. Depending on the zoning, it can be up to 3 units on a lot, and then up to 3 stories would be the max. 2 family dwellings, which would be duplexes, triplexes, per our policy memo, townhouses, accessory structures subordinate to the primary use. That's usually going to be like a detached shed, or maybe you have a detached office space in the backyard. Limited to structures with no more than 3 stories above grade plane. Next slide, please. So what is reviewed for residential permits? We evaluate zoning compliance, which is going to be the City Code Chapter 25.2, and then building code compliance, which is going to be the IRC, the International Residential Code. And then other reviews that may be required are external departments. Some of the examples of that could be flood, erosion, grading and drainage, Austin Energy, Austin Water, and some of the other departments that tie into what we're looking at. Next slide, please. So base zoning for single family lots. Typical base zoning standards is going to be SF lots 1 through 3. Setbacks for that are typically the front 25 feet, an interior would be 5 feet, and then a street side would be 15 feet, and our rear setback would be 10 feet typically. Then we're also looking at maximum building height, which could vary from either 35 or 32 feet. Building coverage. Building coverage is usually the footprint that's taking up the lot, meaning first story, garage, covered patio, covered porch. That's all going to contribute to your building coverage. And then you would add to that number driveway, sidewalk, AC pad, uncovered concrete, and that's how you would get your impervious cover. Then we're also looking at minimum lot size and lot width, and then seeing if FAR, which is flood area ratio, would contribute or not. Next slide, please. So what is subchapter F, or commonly referred to as McMansion? So this section of the code applies to single family residential uses only. So if you're developing either 2 or 3 unit use on your lot, then this section of the code would not apply. It includes specific use limitations and exceptions, and then additional requirements beyond base zoning. Next slide, please. So what type of homes does it apply to? As mentioned, it only applies to single family residential use, and some uses are limited or excluded. A full list of uses and exceptions are in subchapter F, sections 1.2.2 and 1.3. Next slide, please. Extra application requirements. So special drawings may be required, including set plate diagrams. These are commonly referred to as tents, kind of like a 2-dimensional drawing that only certain things can penetrate the size of the tent. Some projects may require drawings prepared by a licensed architect or certified building designer. Next slide, please. All right, building height limits. So the maximum allowed height is 32 feet if you're outside the 100-year floodplain, 35 feet maximum height inside the 100-year floodplain. Also the 32, if you are subject to subchapter F, 32 is going to be your max building height. And if you are not, then 35 feet would be your max building height. Next slide, please. Setbacks and site coverage. So we'd be looking at setbacks, building coverage, impervious cover, and all of those are going to be determined by the base zoning district. Next slide. So floor area is counted. So GFA stands for gross floor area. It includes all enclosed spaces with a ceiling height of 5 feet or more. And we measure that to the outside exterior surface of the wall. So that would include any brick, siding, or any surface material that's on the outside of the wall. And then there are some exceptions to that if you're in subchapter F. Porches, attics designed properly, basements designed properly, garages and carports can be exempted per the language in that section of the code. Next slide, please. The floor to area ratio, commonly referred to as FAR. What does it mean? FAR is the total building size divided by the lot size, and it sets a maximum house size based on lot area. So in subchapter F, the higher of 40% of a lot or 2,300 square feet is going to be your maximum FAR. Next slide, please. What is home? Home options for mobility and equity. So home is actually an acronym as well. The city, when home was passed, it allowed to have more dwelling units on one lot, up to 3 if the zoning is SF1, SF2, or SF3. And it did increase some of the gross floor area allowed in those structures, and it's still kind of based on lot size. It's how you determine how big each dwelling unit can be. Next slide, please. So home phase 1 and phase 2 timeline. So in December of 2023, home phase 1 was adopted by City Council. In February of 2024, we started accepting applications of home phase 1. And then in May of 2024, home phase 2 was adopted by the council. And in August of 2024, we started accepting applications. Next slide, please. Okay, so changes under home. Homes are no longer accessory to another home, meaning that when you develop multiple units, dwelling units on a lot, they are all now considered their own dwelling unit. In the past, some of those would be an accessory to that existing primary dwelling. So each dwelling is treated as a primary unit. Accessory dwelling uses that disappeared after home were accessory apartments, guest houses, and an accessory dwelling for staff that lived on site. There are exceptions to that. There is an infill tool that some neighborhood plans can adopt called secondary apartment infill tool, and that does allow for a different development of a second dwelling unit. Next slide. The housing types that are allowed under home is duplex, 2-unit residential, meaning 2 detached units, 3-unit residential, which would be 3 detached units, and then triplex, meaning all 3 units are in one building, and then small lot single family homes, which would be home phase 2. Next slide, please. So zoning rules under home. Home zoning rules override base zoning. So this applies to setbacks, the floor to area ratio, impervious cover, and building coverage. Now I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Mike.
Thank you, John. My name is Mike Peralta. I'm a zoning plans examiner with residential review. Next slide, please. So the setback standards for a duplex, 2-unit, or 3-unit residential use are reduced from the base zoning requirements. So the front setback would be 15 feet. The interior side yard setback would be 5 feet. The street side yard setback would be 10 feet or less on a low traffic street. And then depending on the rear use or if it's adjacent to an alley, the rear setback could be 5 or 10 feet. And then again, as Victor said, the setback is basically the minimum distance between the property line and where a building can be placed. Next slide, please. So gross floor area and floor area ratio. The gross floor area is the total area of all enclosed space 6 feet and over in height, measured to the exterior of the walls. The floor to area ratio is the ratio of the GFA to the area of the lot expressed in decimal or percentage form. If you're in the residential design and compatibility standards overlay or subchapter F, you would basically have to adhere to certain gross floor area and floor area ratio restrictions. That would be one of the zoning calculations that we would look for. Next slide, please. So this reiterates the last slide. Gross floor area is the total area of all enclosed space over 6 feet and over in height. Floor area ratio is the ratio of GFA to the area of the lot expressed in decimal or percentage form. Next slide, please. So for a duplex and 2-unit home, basically the overall gross floor area is 55% or 3,200 square feet, whichever is greater. The per unit restriction is the greater of 40% or 2,300 square feet. So we would be looking at the overall 2-unit or duplex percentages, and then we would look at the individual unit size to make sure that they both comply to the respective figure. Next slide, please. For a 3-unit home, the overall gross floor area is actually increased to 65% or 4,350 square feet, whichever is greater. And then we would look at a 2-unit maximum of 55% or 3,200 square feet. What the 2-unit maximum is it's basically we would want to see that unit 1 and unit 2 doesn't go over 55%, unit 1 and unit 3 doesn't go over 55%. And so forth, and then unit 2 and unit 3. And then each unit would have a maximum 40% or 2,300 square feet. So if you have a 3-unit project, then we would be looking at the 65% overall, the 55% per 2-unit, and then the 40% per each unit. Next slide, please. So accessory dwelling units versus additional dwelling units. Duplex and 2-unit residential uses, the greater of 55% or 3,200. So this again is reiterating what I just said. So each dwelling may not exceed the greater of 40% or 2,300. For 3-unit residential, the greater of 65% or 4,350. And then the 55% 2-dwelling max, and then the 40% per each dwelling. Next slide, please. We also have a preservation bonus, which basically it allows for an existing home not to be counted towards the gross floor area restriction. So the benefit of that is if you don't have to count that home towards the overall 55% or 65%, then you could add that to the new unit, and potentially you could have more square footage on the lot than you would have if you didn't do a preservation bonus. So this encourages remodeling instead of demolition. Eligible homes may be excluded from gross floor area and FAR limits. The requirements are if it was built 1960 or earlier, keep 50% of the structure. Then you also have to keep 100% of the street-facing facade. If it was built after 1960, you have to keep 50% of the structure. With both of these, it requires a restricted covenant be filled out during plan review and filed with Travis County. And that's basically some legal documents that's going to follow the home and the property pass if you do sell the residence. Next slide, please. All right, small lot, single family residential use. These are the site development standards. So earlier in the presentation, John had mentioned home phase 1 and home phase 2. So with home phase 1, we allowed up to 3 dwelling units on single family home lots. Home phase 2 allowed for smaller minimum lot sizes. So the traditional lot size for SF 2 or SF3 was 5,750 square feet. With home phase 2, we allowed for a new use of small lot, single family residential use, which allowed for the minimum lot size to be 1,800. So it's a much smaller lot, which would increase density to meet the goals of the city. I mean, these are all the site development standards that can be found in the code. There's kind of a lot of, if this is a flag lot or, scenarios that you really want to be specific to your lot. It would be easier to just look to the code and kind of go through it. But just for example, the minimum lot width is 15 feet, 20 feet for flag lots. Front setback is 10 feet, 5 feet for flag lots. The street side yard setback is 10 feet. And then there's also, different scenarios where it could be a little bit different. The interior side yard setback is 5 feet, rear yard setback is 5 feet. So, I mean, if you have questions regarding small lot subdivision, you could always reach out to us regarding the setbacks and we could kind of walk through the code with you. Next slide, please. Other key requirements. So an address is required for each dwelling unit, regardless of size. So if you are submitting for 2-unit, 3-unit, or a duplex use, and you currently have a single family home, you would have to reach out to Address Management Services to get the addresses assigned prior to submitting with us. It helps speed the process along. If you don't do that and we do accept your project, we can't create building permits until we do have the addresses. There's fire separation requirements, which would be reviewed by either a technical reviewer or a fire reviewer. So if the structure is less than 10 feet from another dwelling unit, fire separation is required. If the structure is less than 5 feet from the property line, fire separation is required. And then also fire separation is required for duplexes, townhouse buildings, and triplex buildings. Next slide, please. All right, accessory uses, accessory non-residential uses. An accessory use is a use that is necessary, customary, appropriate, incidental, and subordinate to a principal use. The examples are garages, patios, cabanas, sheds, storage, home office, etc. So even if you're not building a dwelling unit or you don't want a 2-unit or duplex or a 3-unit use, you can still come in and build a detached office with a bathroom or, uh, other accessory structures. Next slide, please. Home occupations. A home occupation is a commercial use that is an accessory to a residential use. A home occupation must comply with the requirements section 25 to 900 home occupations. A home occupation must be conducted entirely within the dwelling unit or an accessory structure. Examples of this are a medical, professional, administrative, or business office, an art workshop or gallery, music, dance, or photography studio, or handicraft or hobby instruction. So this is basically a code section where we get asked about a lot, where what kind of business can I run out of my house? There is a code section 25-2-900 that says these are the list of uses that you can do as a home occupation. There are other restrictions within that code section. I believe it's vehicle traffic and a couple other things. So during review, we wouldn't actually really call this kind of stuff out. I mean, we might say if somebody's showing, a business that we would say, confirm that it complies with the 25-900, and we wouldn't go much further than that. We'd really just be looking at the structure to make sure that it meets all the other zoning requirements. Next slide, please. How to get help. So we have free time trade appointments, virtual and in person, for a number of topics. I mean, I really just only speak to zoning and the land development code. So for residential review, we're responsible for 4 units or less, and we deal with everything from pools to interior remodels to multiple units. So you can schedule a virtual or in-person appointment with the PDC appointments or at the PDC appointments website. And then those are free 20-minute meetings, and we're available Monday through Thursday. Next slide, please. Short-term rentals. Dwellings have So dwellings have the same submittal requirements regardless of their use as a primary dwelling or a short-term rental. This is regulated and licensed by the Austin Development Services Code Compliance Team. Please refer to the short-term rental webpage for information on how to register a short-term rental. As a zoning reviewer, I do not look at the short-term rental requirements, and we don't sign people up for that program. So if you have short-term rental questions, I recommend reaching out to Austin Code, and they'd be happy to walk you through that process. Next slide, please. All right, paid consultations. So we also have paid consultations through residential review. These are paid appointments. If you go to a virtual free walk-in 20-minute meeting and you don't have all of your zoning, needs met, and you have more complex questions than we could answer with the virtual meeting or the in-person meeting, then we do paid appointments. In order to sign up for that, you'd reach out to residential appointment at austintexas.gov. This would go directly to one of the supervisors that we have in residential review. And you could also meet with us, not just for the zoning code, but also for the technical code. Next slide, please. And then preliminary plan review. So we also have paid service through our expedited team. We have expedited zoning reviewers and we have residential review zoning reviewers. Our expedited team is separate. What happens during plan reviews, you pay a little bit more and they'll expedite the review supposedly faster than what would happen with residential review. But they also have their own paid appointments and they're called preliminary plan reviews. And they offer a great service. Again, it's a paid service, and they could answer incredibly complex questions before you get your project submitted. Next slide, please. All right, I'll pass it back to Isis, and then for the questions and answers. Thank you.
Thanks, Mike. Thanks, John. And thanks, Victor. And so now we're at the portion of our presentation where you have the opportunity to ask questions to either Victor, John, or Mike. So they'll go ahead and turn on their cameras again as we get started for the question and answer session. I will say that there's two ways that you can participate. There's a few that have already been answered. And so if you take a look at the Q&A portion, I'll overview them really quickly right now. And you can also raise your hand using the control panel and using the raise hand feature. I'll go over the ones that haven't been answered that are written first. But I'll note that Victor, Mike, and John have already gone through and answered some of them as the presentation went on. Some of them are about deed restrictions. There was a question about setback lines. There was a question about driveways and concrete driveways. That one was, I posted it, but it was actually answered by Victor. And then there's questions about home two, detached dwellings and home. There's two that are about home phase two and rear or setbacks. And so I'll go over right now some of the ones that haven't been answered. All right, so one of the questions, Mike, and I see you starting to type it, so I'll go ahead and read it out loud, and if you want to answer it verbally, you can. One of our participants asked, is it possible to expedite a replat under Home 2? If not expedited, what is the typical review and approval timeline for a Home 2 replat?
Unfortunately, I wouldn't have that information regarding re-subdividing. What would happen in our department is it would already be replatted, and then once it's replatted, it would come to us, and then we would approve a house on that already replatted lot. So I wouldn't be a part of the process that actually reviews the new subdivision when you're replatting it, and I wouldn't be a part of the process that would expedite it. So that would have to be a question for subdivision review.
Okay.
I can
Yeah,
I
we
can
can.
I
Go
can
ahead.
speak to that a little bit. As part of the home process, the city is also undertaking ways to make the replatting process smoother and more consolidated for smaller residential plats. So there isn't a direct expedited process, but the city is working to make those plats as smooth as possible.
Got it. Thank you, Victor. The next question that we have was, in existing neighborhoods, have the setbacks changed for the existing neighborhoods?
But yeah, I can take that one.
Mhm.
They would only change if home development was proposed, meaning like if I have an existing single family residence and then I propose to build one or two additional dwelling units, then my setbacks would be different. But it didn't change any existing setbacks for existing uses.
Okay, got it. The next question that we have are the same appointments for free guidance available for commercial zoning, or is it only for residential zoning?
I'll take that, and the short answer is absolutely. On the PDC appointments page that's linked in the presentation, there also is an option for commercial zoning appointments.
Awesome. All right. I have another question here asking, what is a flag lot?
Well, a flag lot, it's kind of hard to to describe without just showing a picture, but it's basically a lot where it has like, a 15 to 20 foot street access portion of the lot, and then it goes deeper behind another lot, and then a majority of the lot is located more inland and not directly off of the street. I mean, it's called a flag lot because it looks like a flag. So it has like a pole for street access, and then a majority of the lot is shaped like a rectangular flag off of that pole. So I mean, if you kind of Google search flag lot, you'll see what I'm saying. Unfortunately, I can't share my screen or something where I could look it up for you. But it's just the type of lot that doesn't meet the standard frontage or minimum lot width at where it gets access from the street,
Got it.
if that makes
Thank you.
sense. Kind of rambled on there.
All right. The next question that I have is, John, you mentioned that homes could be no more than 35 feet tall if you build inside the 100-year floodplain. They thought that no developments were allowed in the floodplain. When can you build in the floodplain?
So flood is a completely separate department. So you would definitely want to reach out to the residential flood reviewer, and discuss those options with them, because that's not something that our department is going to look at.
Okay. And me and my team and the engagement team can go back to Watershed and follow up on that information for our attendees. All right. And I have a hand up, so I'll go ahead. They were next in the queue, and then I'll go back to the written questions. So let me go ahead and call on Jeffrey. You ready for your question? What question do you have?
Well, it's more clarification. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay. I own two properties. On the first property I built, I had an ADU put in the backyard, and I had a restriction of 5 feet. There was electrical lines on the easement on the back part of the property, and the city said, no, you had to push your building to 14 feet from the electrical lines. Okay. The question I had with Home 2 or the newer regulations, if I were to build an ADU at my other property, and the setback was 5 feet, is the electrical lines going to push my building 14, 15 feet away from the electrical lines? Or are you allowing the building to be 5 feet away from the property line?
So we do have, our land development code, but that is Austin Energy, and their setback requirements from, above grade or below grade power lines are going to supersede the standard base zoning district of a setback. So I can't say for certain if it's 14 feet, but I do know
Well,
they
that's an
do.
example. What's an example?
Yes, yeah. So their easement from above grade power lines is definitely going to take precedent to the base zoning.
Okay, that's
setback.
what I wanted to know. Electrical power takes precedence over zoning for energy purposes or even gas purposes or whatever. That's what I wanted to know. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Thanks for your question, Jeffrey. Appreciate you tuning in. All right. Next question that we have is also a question about our appointment. So we had an attendee ask, other than an appointment for basic questions, is there any other fast way to redirect customers to development services to get their answers about how, why, what, and where? Victor, any references that you might point folks to?
Yeah, I mean, I want to first say that, in my opinion, I think that scheduling a meeting with us is really the most effective and efficient way to get information, especially when we're talking about how, what, where, why, and when, because that's really 5 different answers. We also do, I can speak to the land use assistance team. We also provide responses to questions that are emailed to us. But really, again, if you know, if it's more than a one question, my experience is that a scheduled meeting is really the most efficient way to get everything answered in the shortest amount of time. And I can share our email address with Isis to share with the information that's sent out.
Yeah, I think we did. We put it in the chat and we'll go ahead and share it also. I think it's in
Okay.
the presentation. If we can go to the next slide, please. Okay. We have one more question in the queue, but meanwhile, we answer that question. I think we have a gray box showing there, but there you go. While we answer that question, I invite y'all to let us know how we did. We have a survey. If you scan that QR code, or I will put the link in the chat as well as we're answering the next question. Give us some feedback to let us know what you thought of this presentation, what you thought of the format, what you thought of the information. It helps us plan and it helps us prepare for the next ones. And then join us at our next session or take a look at the sessions that we had in the past. It was publicinput.com/info series. Okay, and with that, we'll go ahead and go to the next question. So we don't have folks here from Austin Fire, but we have a question about fire separation. And the question is, does fire separation requirements apply to existing homes where a shed was built less than 5 feet from the home or fence? Victor, Mike, or John, can you speak generally to that? If not, we might have to get back to.
Yeah, so I was gonna post the general fire prevention email, but they would definitely want to chat with either a technical building code reviewer or someone directly from fire.
Okay, got it. Yeah, there's 2 questions, one from energy, one from fire, that my teammate will get back to them, and then we'll send them out in a summary to the folks who attended, and then we post our recordings of our presentation in our public meetings page, along with a copy of the presentation that'll be linked in public info in publicinput.com/info series. Next slide, please. And then appreciate y'all for tuning in to us. Mike, Victor, John, appreciate all the information and answering the questions that y'all had. Again, this presentation was recorded. We will post it on our public meetings page and in our info series page. And then here are some ways that you can stay tuned and stay involved. You can subscribe. You have our monthly newsletter that's Building Connections, or you can find us online. All of those links are able to be searched on developmentatx.com. We have a link to our building connections. We have our social media, and there you'll find the latest on upcoming sessions. We also have a Land Development Academy that is a more technical series than this one. Make sure to check that out. That is also publicinput.com/Land Development Academy. We have way more sessions planned for the year. Appreciate everyone for tuning in. And with that, I'll go ahead and end it out. See you at the next time, and thank you so much for tuning in. Have a good rest of your day, everyone.